I've served the Nine all my days, and I chart my course by the cycles of the heavens.
Hello, and welcome to the Yetti Den.
I see you. Hello.
Today, I want to unpack the Birthsigns in The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. The Birthsigns are presented to the player in the opening of the game as these stylish, hand-drawn Tolkien meets old-school Dungeons & Dragons illustrations. While choosing my character's Birthsign, I thought it'd be fun to do a deep dive video on Oblivion focusing on these 13 Birthsigns. I personally really enjoy discovering retro titles that I missed out on. I like to think of the Yetti Den as a place dedicated to the love of timeless classics while reviewing what makes these titles unique. So, if you love retrospective content like this Oblivion deep dive, then I'm excited for you to hang with us here at the Yetti Den. My friend Matt and I release a weekly podcast here on the Yetti Den called Tactically Sound.
And I just remember the elf coming up to tell you, like, run, run! And he just had this blank face of like nothing's happening, but he's freaking out. Oh, you gotta get out of here! Everything's burning! And did not match his facial expression at all.
On that show, we've been embarking on an 8-episode series focused on Oblivion. In the first episode, I share that my entry to the series was through the PC and Xbox port of the third game, Morrowind. And my co-host Matt shared that his introduction to the Elder Scrolls was through the 5th game, Skyrim. So we both somehow missed this Xbox 360 classic. Before I re-entered the Xbox and PC ecosystem in around 2022, I attempted to play Oblivion through the PlayStation 3 port on PlayStation Now's streaming service. And I want to say I made it about 10 hours in before realizing I really should experience the game in a slightly more native format. I immediately purchased and downloaded the Steam port and the Xbox 360 Oblivion port made available through Xbox via the console backwards compatibility program. With that being said, I've experienced this Oblivion opening dungeon a couple different times now, naturally drawing my focus on the little details of the game's design. And with this being my first official playthrough where I finally intend to roll credits on this essential Elder Scrolls installment, I figured it'd be the perfect time to cover the game on the Yetti Den. The Elder Scrolls series introduces its players to the open world of Tamriel via unique game openings, whether it's waking up as a prisoner docked at Citanin in Morrowind.
Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming. What's your name?
Or waking up in an Imperial prison in Cyrodiil in Oblivion.
Hey, Wood Elf, you're a little far from the forest, huh? Looks like your days of woodland frolicking have come to a tragic end.
Or Skyrim's wagon ride to a prisoner's execution.
Hey, you. You're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right? Walked right into that Imperial ambush, same as us. And that thief over there.
Obviously, there's a theme of being a prisoner. In Oblivion's case, Todd Howard and the team at Bethesda did a great job of introducing the game's many systems while also tying in the player's experience to the main quest story conflict.
Let me see your face. You are the one from my dreams.
One of the role-playing systems that the player gets introduced to in that opening tutorial section is the idea of these Birthsigns. And the Birthsigns are presented to the player by the Emperor of Tamriel himself, Uriel Septim, voiced by the great Patrick Stewart.
For 65 years I have ruled this empire. Generals and kings have knelt at my command. But a darkness comes. the blood tide rises. These are the closing days of the Third Era, and the final hours of my life. Find him and close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
This system existed in the prior game Morrowind, in which you are presented with 13 Birthsigns.
Very good. The letter that preceded, you mentioned you were born under a certain sign. And what would that be?
The unofficial Elder Scroll Pages.net has a list that describes the Birthsigns in Morrowind as Birthsigns that can grant various bonuses, abilities, which have permanent effects that cannot be removed, but also powers with spell-like abilities that can be used once per day and do not cost magicka, and or finally spells. So those are like the 3 different kinds of Birthsigns. In Morrowind's case, there are 3 groupings of Birthsigns: the Guardians, the Serpents, and the Charges. Each of those Birthsigns represent 1 month, except for the Serpent. So let's go through those real quick. So you have the first, which is the Guardians, and those are listed as follows. So 1, the Warrior or Warwid; 2, the Mage or Fae; 3, the Thief, which is also called Hara or Hera. The second grouping really only contains 1 Birthsign, which is the 4th Birthsign called the Serpent, otherwise known as Starcursed. The final grouping of Birthsigns is called the Charges, and that's 5 through 13. So that's the Lady or Lady's Favor, the Steed, also called Charioteer, the Lord Tolkien, the Apprentice Elfborn, the Atronach, Womb Burned, the Ritual Blessed Touch Sign, the Lover, Mooncalf, the Shadow, Moon Shadow Sign, and finally the Tower, Beggar's Nose. Here's what's written via the Firmament book in Morrowind. Quote, the stars of Tamriel are divided into 13 constellations. 3 of them are the major constellations known as the Guardians. These are the Warrior, the Mage, and the Thief. Each of the Guardians protects its 3 charges from the 13th constellation, the Serpent. When the sun rises near one of the constellations, it is that constellation's season. Each constellation has a season of approximately 1 month. The Serpent has no season, for it moves about in the heavens, usually threatening one of the other constellations. While we're here gathering context for the lore behind the Birthsigns, we'll go a little deeper into the Birthsigns as they're presented in Morrowind through the Firmaments text. So the constellation descriptions. So the Warrior. The Warrior is the first Guardian constellation, and he protects his charges during their seasons. The Warrior's own season is Last Seed, when his strength is needed for the harvest. His charges are the Lady, the Steed, and the Lord. Those born under the sign of the Warrior are skilled with weapons of all kinds, but prone to short tempers. Next, we have the Mage. The Mage is a Guardian constellation whose season is Rain's Hand, when magicka was first used by man. His charges are the Apprentice, the Golem, and the Ritual. Those born under the Mage have more magicka and talent for all kinds of spellcasting, but are often arrogant and absent-minded. Next, we have the Thief. The Thief is the last Guardian constellation, and her season is the darkest month of Evening Star. Her charges are the Lover, the Shadow, and the Tower. Those born under the sign of the Thief are not typically thieves, though they take risks more often and only rarely come to harm. They will run out of luck eventually, however, and rarely live as long as those born under other signs. So next we have the Serpent. The Serpent wanders about in the sky and has no season, though its motions are predictable to a degree. No characteristics are common to all who are born under the sign of the Serpent. Those born under this sign are the most blessed and the most cursed. The Lady. The Lady is one of the Warrior's charges, and her season is Heartfire. Those born under the sign of the Lady are kind and tolerant. Next we have the Steed. The Steed is one of the Warrior's charges, and her season is mid-year. Those born under the sign of the steed are impatient and always hurrying from one place to another.
Better not close this one. There's no way to open it from the other side.
The Lord. The Lord's season is first seed, and he oversees all of Tamriel during the planting. Those born under the sign of the Lord are stronger and healthier than those born under other signs. Next, we have the Apprentice. The Apprentice season is sun's height. Those born under the sign of the Apprentice have a special affinity for magic of all kinds, but are more vulnerable to magic as well. Then we have the Atronach. The Atronach, often called Golem, is one of the mage's charges. Its season is sun's dusk. Those born under this sign are natural sorcerers with deep reserves of magicka, but they cannot generate magicka of their own. Then we have the Ritual. The Ritual is one of the mage's charges, and its season is Morning Star. Those born under this sign have a variety of abilities depending on the aspects of the moon and the divines. Next we have the Lover. The Lover is one of the thief's charges, and her season is Sun's Dawn. Those born under the sign of the Lover are graceful and passionate. The Shadow. The Shadow season is second seed. The Shadow grants those born under her sign the ability to hide in the shadows. The Tower. The Tower is one of the thief's charges, and its season is Frostfall. Those born under the sign of the Tower have a knack for finding gold and can open locks of all kinds. Now, let's get back to Oblivion. Throughout the 4th game's opening tutorial dungeon, you'll start to establish your character's background, and early on you'll get asked to pick your birth sign. Here's how the Emperor of Tamriel, Uriel Septim, explains the birth signs in Oblivion.
I've served the 9 all my days, and I chart my course by the cycles of the heavens. The skies are marked with numberless sparks, each a fire, and every one a sign. I know these stars well, and I wonder, which sign marked your birth?
So let's go through each of these birth signs as they're described in the game, and then we'll talk about the sign I chose for my character and why. So these are the 13 birth signs of Oblivion. The Apprentice. The Apprentice ability confers a 100-point bonus to your magicka attribute, but gives you a 100% weakness to magic. The Atronach. With the Atronach ability, you don't regain magicka over time. Instead, you have a 50% spell absorption to recharge your magicka. Your base magicka is also increased by 150 points. The Lady. The Lady's Blessing confers bonuses of 10 points to your willpower and endurance attributes. The Lord. Being born under the Lord gives you the Blood of the North lesser power to generate up to 90 points of health. However, you also gain the Tolkien Curse, a permanent 25% weakness to fire. The Lover. Use the Lover's Kiss power once a day to paralyze an opponent for 10 seconds at the cost of the 120 points of fatigue. The Mage. The Mage ability confirms a permanent bonus of 50 points to your magicka. The Ritual. Those born under the Ritual use the Mara's Gift power once a day as a powerful restore health spell. The Blessed Word can turn the undead. The Serpent. Gain the Serpent spell to cause a slow but potent poison on touch, while simultaneously curing yourself and dispelling magic on yourself. Casting this spell costs 100 points of fatigue. The Shadow. Use the Moon Shadow power once a day to become invisible for 60 seconds. The Steed. The Steed ability grants a bonus of 20 to your speed attribute. The Thief. The Thief ability grants a 10-point bonus to your agility, speed, and luck attributes. The Tower. With the Tower key power, once a day open a door or container of average lock level or less. The Tower Warden reflects 5 points of damage for 120 seconds once a day. And finally, the Warrior. The Warrior ability grants a bonus of 10 points to your strength and endurance attributes. So on the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, there is a section under the birth signs called General Tips, and I thought this was pretty interesting, so I'm going to include it here in the video and read it to you. The birth signs can be categorized into 3 general groups. Those that give attribute bonuses, those that affect your magicka, and those that provide lesser and or greater powers. Attribute bonuses: Lady, Steed, Thief, and Warrior. Magicka effects: Apprentice, Atronach, and Mage. Lesser/greater powers: Lord, Lover, Ritual, Serpent, Shadow, and Tower. all attributes are capped at 100. The warrior, thief, lady, and steed birthsigns won't allow you to go above this cap. A character's chosen birthsign cannot be changed in-game without the use of the console, but Doomstones can provide additional powers, sometimes even permanent ones, that are similar to, and in some cases better than, those offered by the birthsigns. For example, the Shadow birthsign offers invisibility for 60 seconds, while the Jones Stone offers invisibility for 120 seconds, end quote. The character that I'm going to be role-playing as is called Odessa. Odessa is a character from a Dungeons & Dragons campaign that I wrote. He was a quest giver and a little bit of a trickster. The players in my campaign would often roll their eyes at him because he can be a little bit selfish, and he has these friends in high places, but he's also a shopkeep who's always looking for adventure and desperate to roll the dice on his next big break. So I ended up choosing the thief skill because at the core, Odessa is a thief. He loves a good dungeon prowl. And even though he's got an air of confidence about him, he's quite often really looking to just stash away someone else's treasures that he can then flip for a profit in his store. So I'm curious which birthsign you choose when you play Oblivion. Is it different depending on your character? Do you have a favorite? If you grew up playing Oblivion, I'm curious to know what you chose, so please let us know in the comments. Did I make a smart move with the thief sign? Let me know, and I will be back to talk more Oblivion soon. Later. Bye.